went off as like after 30 minutes and you like snoozed it and then like it went off again, you snoozed it, and then like you're like you sleep for 3 hours and you wake up like yeah.
All right. Okay, you guys, happy Monday. Hope you have a great week ahead. And sorry, it takes me the first few lectures. I really would like to learn your names, so I go around and check you off. But once I know all of your names, I'll just pass it to one of my wonderful TAs and we can start right in time. Okay, let's just catch up. I know it was Friday and everybody hopefully had a great weekend. So you obviously you forgot all about food analysis, which is expected. You can say yes, it's okay. I would not take -2 if you forget. All right, so let's try to remember or guess some of this, what we covered last time. So give examples of tests would want to do in case of, I'm forgetting a U in there, would want to do in case of product development. What would you do or think of, or an example of a, yes, Rob.
I'm curious about measuring the product's hygroscophicity or how quickly it pulls water out of the air.
Oh, how hygroscopic they are. Okay. Well, it depends on the product at hand, but let's say you are developing a new product with a new ingredient. So if you remember the example we gave, I think replacing butter with margarine. What do you remember we talked about in terms of tests? You can look back at your notes. Caleb.
I think a pretty easy one is just water activity.
Sure. So you would look to see if water activity gets impacted and how that might impact shelf life. That's one. Okay. Greta, no, you're not Greta, Rachel. Aha.
I guess
I made you forget? It's yeah, blame the instructor, why don't you?
I guess I would say so like the packaging.
Yeah, that's when you have, remember, I know there was a packaging issue, which was when he gave the food forensic kind of looking at oxidation and what happens, why the product is oxidized, you look at the pack. But in this particular example, gram. Yes, you look at sensory, but also, okay. Wait, Sisha? How, Cecia. Okay, Cecia.
Texture analysis, like how
Yeah. Exactly. Butter versus margarine, how would that? Yes, Tina?
saturated and unsaturated fat content.
Absolutely, because you're changing from animal fat to vegetable fat. What else could be impacted? Go ahead, Owen. Flavor, yes. So good, you got all of this. Competition. If you are a competitor, you look at a product, what would you do first? Monday lab. What did you do today? Yes, go ahead, Emily. Reverse engineer. So you look at the package, you look at the nutrition label, use a nutrition label program, you enter the nutrition label information, you enter the ingredients, and then you try to come up with formulation. That's the first thing you want to do. What was the formulation, the percentages? And then you might look at other characteristics, sensory, texture, composition, but you start off trying to figure out what did they put in there and what was the formula. Change in process. So the example I gave you was for soy flour that is used for sold to somebody that will use it for fermentation. And then we changed the cooker. And we saw lower growth of the microorganisms. So what do we look for? So it was sold for the protein in it. so that the bacteria or yeast or whatever is being fermented grow, and then they grow less. What do we look at?
Protein concentration.
Protein concentration. So yes, basically, we look at protein concentration, but what other than protein concentration is important?
Like
Tyler, sorry.
storage temperature.
Uh, mm, what do you think could happen to the protein if it's misprocessed, like more heat? Or the denaturation of the protein, the digestibility of the protein might be impacted. So you look at what happened to the protein, so that it might indicate why the microbes grew less. Forensics, we gave an example of they found a sharp object. What would you do? What do you use? Go ahead. Let me cheat a little bit. Sumili. Microscopy. Yes, one example we gave of scanning electron microscopy, and in that particular example, it wasn't glass, it was crystallized sugar. All right, okay. So we talked about different characteristics of the method. Well, let me bring you back to why we're talking about method. So when you are an analyst, the first thing, what am I going to analyze? What's my objective? And you determine, okay, I'm going to analyze reducing sugar. Okay, so many methods out there. How do I choose my method? So in order to choose the method and validate it, that it's going to give me good results, so I look at the characteristics of the method. That means how specific is it for reducing sugar? How precise? That means I get good reproducibility, low variability. How accurate, how close to the true value it's going to be. Whenever I run the assay, whether I run it today or next week or next month, is it going to give me same results or is it going to be too valuable? Am I able to get a representative sample and test it so I can make a decision on the entire population? Is the procedure adequate for what I want to do? Do I have repeatable results? Do I have the material for testing? Do I have the safety measures, all of that? And then I can validate my method by running standards. So let's say I have my sample, it's unknown. So I want to determine the reducing sugar in my unknown. So I get a standard, let's say glucose, and I know what the reducing power of glucose is, really 100. So 100% reducing is always relative to glucose. So basically, I get the standard, I run the assay, I see if I get the expected result. And that is one thing. There are places where you can get standards. One very common is National Institute for Science and Technology, NIST. National Institute for Science and Technology can offer reference standards and can tell you whatever you're looking for, what that reference standards should the reading be for it. So you run your method, you run that reference status, and then you see if your method is valid. There are sample services like the AACI, which is cereal and grains now, offer sample services. That means they send you references, you analyze your samples, you send them the results, and they come up with reports for you about the validity of your sample. Same for AOCS, American Oil Chemist Society. And then you can also have your internal control samples. So you take samples, you measure them probably using a different method, and you trust the results. So these control samples that you have, you use them to measure a particular of reducing sugar in that example, using this new method that you want to employ. And then you determine if you always get the same results, then your method is valid. This often happens when you want to adopt a new method. You never adopt a new method without testing validity. Okay. So there are many official methods, and I mentioned it last time. When we say official method, that means they have been approved by an organization. And how you approve, do you know how we get a method to approve? Are you familiar with this at all? How AOAC, AACCI, AOCS develop their method and then they become official. Anybody can guess how they do that? Okay, nobody wants to guess.
Different tribes,
Say that again?
different tribes, they are doing different tribes and studies. Require the specific business.
Yeah, so they do different hazard, right?
Yeah.
So different times, they measure the same thing multiple times. And also they commission different labs across across the nation, international, and they give them samples and they ask them all to run the same method. If they're able to get the reproducible results no matter where, then that method becomes official, validated official. So they test it, they refine it. If it is not consistent results across different labs, they go back, refine the method, and then ask the same labs to measure again using this method. And when they get consistent results across different labs, then the method becomes official method. And it gets adopted. And these official methods are used, for example, for nutrition labeling. You have to use official methods of analysis to determine the components that go onto your nutrition label. Also, your official methods are the methods you use to calibrate secondary methods like NIR, for example, or mid-IR. So you need an official method to calibrate the methods that are quick and not official themselves. Okay, so this is a list of different organizations that develop these methods, and they are in your book. But here are a few examples. So, what? Why does it do that? How do I make it go away?
Yep.
All right, now set up professional. Why is it doing this to me? What? Drag it? Oh, close it. Ha. All right, good. So it used to be, what was it? AOAC. It used to be Association of Analytical Chemists. But it changed recently to Association of Official Agricultural Chemists. I don't know why they did that, but it still has the same abbreviation. And they have official methods and they keep updating. The last edition was actually last year, and it's edition 21st. I didn't update it before I posted the slides. Make sure to cross. The last edition you have on the slide was 20th edition. This is the newest edition. So you can see that there are different chapters based on the samples. And in those different samples, there are different methods like for composition or any characterization. There are official methods for wines, for coffee, for etc. cereal foods. Doesn't want to move. Okay. This is the American Association of Cereal Chemists International, now is known as Cereal and Grains. They also have their own approved method. The last edition is from 2010. It's the 11th edition. And also they have different chapters and different methods of analyses that have been validated, mostly for cereal foods. And then you have the American Oil Chemist Society, where it's mostly methods for fats and oils. There's some for protein as well, like for soy protein, oil seeds methods. And then you see that there is a method, for example, for lecithin, methods for measuring oil characteristics from different sources. Okay, and then the last, I think this is the last one I have. It's the American Public Health Association. They have standard methods for examination of dairy. So this is specifically for dairy products and methods that have been validated for cheeses, yogurts, milk, etc. And this is really old edition. I checked, they haven't came up with a new edition, still 20 years old, but seems like they don't need to. Okay, any questions before we move on to our next topic? You know, you guys, you can ask me questions and still also consider participation point. Don't be, you have a question, Rob. Okay, go ahead.
So, given that the dairy people have updated their contaminants in 20 years, are there standard methods that are more modern for newer contaminants like PFAs or those sorts of things?
There always are methods that come out, but they are not necessarily all standardized and validated
For dairy.
for dairy. But that doesn't mean they're not good methods, but nobody has taken them, adopted them to make them official.
But you could still apply it.
Yes, absolutely. Like melamine, for example, we had this outbreak 2 years ago, and they've been developing methods to determine melamine in milk, dry powder milk, and all sorts of things. So, but it's not an official method yet. All right, very good. Yes.
My name,
Well, wait. I forgot your name. Say your name.
my name's Gray.
Gray. I'm so sorry, Gray. I'll get you. Oh, you're wearing gray too. It's okay, Gray. Go ahead.
How often do they like retest the test? Or do they go-
Reassess the test. Well, if it's already been validated and it's working well, they don't reassess it unless somebody came to them and say, there is this new method that I want to validate that is better than your original method. So they go ahead and test that new method, and they might accept it and replace that with him. Yeah, somebody needs to make a case for the method. Yeah, very good. Thank you, Gray. Okay, all right, moving on. All right, some of you have done the lab already, and then Wednesday lab will be doing nutrition labeling lab, learning a new, well, not a program just to develop nutrition labels and do reverse engineering and such. All right, let's look at this. Let's see what you know about labeling. All right, according to the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, Food Safety and Inspection Services by the USDA, nutrition labeling regulation, the following is true. I'll let you read it and tell me what is true. Don't worry about your answer. If you have a feeling towards an answer, say it. Don't be shy. Wait, Sophie?
Yeah, is it?
D, methods of analysis are to be
No,
determined.
sorry.
What?
E.
E, stating percent daily value for vitamin A and vitamin B12 is mandatory on the label. Hold that thought, Sophie. Anybody else want to have an opinion? Go ahead. Wait a second. If you're not Christian, you are. Okay, say your name so that Haley. No, this is Haley over here. Okay. Oh, you are Christian. I second guessed myself. Okay, go ahead.
Is it?
Huh? D. Method of analysis are to be determined by the manufacturer. Hold that thought. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Tyler. Showing percent daily value for protein is mandatory, I wish. Anybody else? Go ahead, Ovid. B, nutrition labeling is required only if a nutrition claim is made. Hold that thought, Ovid. Okay, Kendall, what are you gonna say? Hey, oh, what do you want to say? Nutrition labeling is required only if a food contained an added nutrient. That would have been correct in 1973. But you get the credit. Hey, remember, no matter what your answer is, you're gonna get the credit. And Kendall, you're right. None of this is correct. Yeah, it's all right. I like you to give me wrong answers. It is more fun that way. All right. So none of this is true. For example, vitamin A and vitamin B12 are not required. What are the vitamins that are required on the label? So those of you that just did the label, go ahead. Yeah, but vitamins. So iron is mineral. Do you remember? Huh? Vitamin D, and what other vitamin? Kendall? What's that? So calcium, mineral, and iron, mineral. What else? Potassium, mineral. Okay,
Is vitamin C?
no longer, it used to be. Yeah, vitamin D, somebody said it, but yes. So do you know that, yes?
So the only one that's required is vitamin D. Okay. It
Vitamin
said
A and
and-
C, vitamin A and C used to be acquired until the new nutrition label came out.
so
Right.
Only D.
Only D. So vitamin A and C back in the 90s, we had issues with vitamin C deficiency, like, you know, the sailors, what do you call it, scurvy? Yeah, yeah, and then also vitamin A was also a problem, so that became on the label. Now we have more problem with vitamin D deficiency because we don't see the sun very much. And we get cooped up. Yes.
Does low fat, low cholesterol diets affect vitamin D deficiency?
Cholesterol is in terms of absorption of vitamin.
How do you value?
You know what? I don't know if it's related to cholesterol. Who's a nutrition double major? Hi, have you taken vitamins and minerals, or that's a graduate? Yeah, you know, I'm trying to convince Dan Gallagher to give the vitamins lecture because he does a really interesting, he's from the nutrition side, so he brings in really interesting stories. So hold that thought for him when he comes later this semester and ask that question. All right. So let's see. And protein daily value is not mandatory unless there. When is it mandatory? Can you guess? Yeah, under 4 years of age, because protein impact growth. So yes, what else? Yes. If you're making a protein claim, absolutely. If you're just saying it's a high source of protein or a good source of protein, prove it. You have to put that % daily value. What else? Yeah. Yeah, you're adding protein to make a claim, right? Yeah, you're adding protein to, usually you add protein to make a high protein claim, right? But you guys that go to the gym and you're an athlete, you're building your muscles, so you're gonna take a bar or a protein bar or protein drink, they should put % daily value on athlete related products. Okay, let's see. Nutrition labeling is required. We said this is in 1973, so let's give you a little bit of a history. All right, so FDA controls the labeling of all products except for meat, poultry, and eggs, which is regulated by the FSIS. Okay, so these are just knowledge for you. So the first labeling act came in 1906 and then another one in 1938. At the time, the labeling was only the amount of food in the package. That's all what you get. The common name, whatever is the common name, cheese, milk, whatever it is. And the list of ingredients. So that these acts said this is what should be on the label. All right, and then came another act in 1973, and then I'll tell you what it goes in there in the next slide. So they gave it a little bit more regulation, and the last one that came in 1990, the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act, and they keep adding things to it as we go, but this is the act that resulted in the nutrition label we currently know and made it obligatory for most foods. Not all of them. So do we have nutrition label on eggs? No. Do we have nutrition label on individual packs in a big box? We don't. Do we have nutrition label on produce? We don't. So there are specific exceptions, but this act came to make sure that it is a mandatory to have nutrition label on most food. So here's a little bit of what it used to be in 1973. That's when we have to have nutrition labeling or a nutrition label when we add a nutrient. Let's say we added vitamin A or calcium or whatever, we have to put the nutrition label to show that this has this much amount of that added nutrient. And nutrition claim. So low fat, high in protein. And at that time, they were focusing on macronutrients, fat, protein, carbohydrate. That was their focus back then. And then it became, instead of an optional thing with those exceptions, it became mandatory or required to put the content of specific macro and micronutrients. And that's when people started to get more focused on micronutrients, vitamin deficiency, or mineral deficiency, or high pressure relating to sodium. So people were concerned now with the micronutrients. And that's why we see, other than macronutrients, micronutrients on the label. And it is mandatory or required for most foods. So in 2003, from 1990 to 2003, there was no trans fat. They made an addition to include trans fat, especially because of its correlation to cardiovascular diseases and its presence mostly in hydrogenated oils that were, or fats that were used in products. So that became an issue and it had to be put in on the labels. Why am I going up? Okay, so the new label was proposed in 2014, was approved in 2016, and it took 8 years to implement. And especially, it was supposed to be implemented, I believe, I don't know, 2020 finally, and then the pandemic hit, and then they pushed it even more. But now it is in effect, and there should be compliance starting with January 2022. So if you look at the old one and the new one, what's the first thing that like strikes you as different? Go ahead, Kristen. The calories, yeah, it's just bolded. Hey, watch, calories is big. What else? Go ahead. Great.
The servings.
Huh?
The servings. It's like that.
What?
Serving size.
Serving size. Yes, it's bolded. All right, so calories, serving size, bolded. What else? Go ahead, Graham. Give a numerical value. Yeah, well, see, I didn't notice that, but good notice. I was Razzie.
They also do break down the sugars, like showing what's the added sugars versus.
Ah.
natural.
Perfect. Just had your name. Say your name again. Hey.
They don't have a table at the bottom.
Oh yeah, they removed that. Okay, very good. What other observations? Go ahead. Yeah.
And the calories from fat is in the top, next to the calories.
Yeah, they removed calories from fat, didn't they? Huh? Calories from fat is gone. Okay. Rob?
They also adjusted the values of the percentages. So 8 grams used to be 12%, now it's 10%.
Of
So
what?
value used to be 12%.
Oh.
47 grams used to be 12%, now it's 13%.
Oh, okay. They followed the new regulations for fat. Okay, that's good. You're seeing things I didn't even notice, but okay, what else? All that. Huh? Potassium, but all the,
Even though it's vitamin A and C.
yes. And you see here, vitamin D. Calcium and iron stay. Potassium was added because of its connection to muscle health. So that was added here. Yeah, and dietary fiber, total sugars includes added sugar. Yeah, but see, no percent daily value for protein. So whatever is this nutrition label, it's not aimed at those products that we need nutrition, daily value for protein. Okay, good. So daily reference value. So these are, I hope updated. I need to check again if I use the correct table. But anyway, these you need to memorize for the quiz. No,
I'm gonna say if this isn't updated, I'm not gonna memorize it.
no. No, don't forget me, sadly. You don't, but it's a reference for you. All right, so it just gives you how many grams per day is required of these different components of food. And this is the reference daily intake for vitamins and minerals. Now, this you need to memorize. No, you don't. Gray?
What are they basing these numbers off of? Cause like 50 grams of protein, I'm sorry, but that's not enough for me.
Which one?
So there's no gluten value.
So, no, okay, this is the evidence, but you're right. So it depends on per kilogram of person's weight.
Yeah.
But this is on average 50 grams.
And if you only.
No, it's not enough for you, I'm sure, huh?
That's only based if you were healthy at 3,000 calories a day.
Yes, yes, it is based on a 2,000 calorie diet, yeah. Mhm. No, that's a good point, right? All joking aside, but. Okay, so this table here, students used to need this when they were doing the project and they needed to develop nutrition label and figure out how do they round the different components. You're not doing that project, but it's good to keep in mind that there is rounding rules for the different components you see on the nutrition label. For example, anything less than 5 calories is 0. You put it as 0 calorie. Let's see, everything less than 0.5 grams, for example, for total fat, you report it as 0, insignificant or 0. So these are just, again, FYI, good reference tables in case you ever need in your job to do rounding, or figure out rounding, you'll find them in the book. So I just mentioning them FYI. Now, calorie, how do we determine the total calorie that you see on the label? You can do it by calculation, or you can do it by actually measuring the calorie in something called calorie bump, energy bump. You put the food and then you combust it and you record the energy generated. But mostly you just add up the calories based on the grams of your protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So what's the calories per gram for protein? What the calories per gram, per 1 gram of protein? Go ahead. Wait a second. Okay, say your name. We don't have time for this. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, protein 4 calories. What about fat? Let's see, go ahead. 9, very good. What about carbohydrates? Go ahead. Okay, I said your name earlier, and now it's gone. So then-
Jordan.
Jordan, yes.
Isn't it also 4?
4. Okay, very good. What's the calories per gram of alcohol? 7, yes. You need that number when we do total carbohydrate in beer in the lab. We calculate calories from carbs and calculate calories. It's not for drinking. Don't get too excited. Gray. Okay. You were so happy the minute I said we're gonna do beer in lab. Okay. All right. And usually kilocalories is reported as calories with a capital C, just FYI. Okay. And then total carbohydrates, sometimes you subtract the dietary fiber, sometimes you don't. But if you have really high amount or percentage of dietary fiber, you really need to subtract that from the carbohydrate total before calculating calorie, because dietary fiber is not digested, so you don't get calories from it. Okay. All right, so protein quality assays are needed to determine percent daily value of protein. So quality assays, meaning you need to get the protein digestibility and amino acid score. So most foods for anybody 1 year older, we need to get this PDCAS, protein digestibility corrected amino acid score, and it's 0 to 1. Okay, so maximum is 1. And for infants, we can use the protein efficiency ratio, which is a rat study based on the growth. Feed the protein to the baby rats and measure their growth. Their growth is equivalent to the growth of baby humans. But that's why it's only for infants. It correlates really well with growth of infants. However, not for adults, obviously. Imagine we consume protein and gain weight every time we consume protein. That would be very, very sad for you, Gray, won't it? No? Okay. So we'll learn about these assay, protein efficiency ratio, and PDCAS in chapter 24. So I need to clarify, how do we determine percent daily value when we get the protein quality? So both PER and PDCAS score up to 1. So maximum is 1. So if you have 10 grams of protein and you have perfect score, so it's a complete protein, it's fully digestible, like egg protein or whey protein or meat protein or casein, you get 10 grams per serving, you get 10 grams consumed. So 10 out of 50, whatever that is 20% daily value, okay? But if you're consuming, let's say, pea protein, PDCAS is 0.8. So 10 grams of pea protein is really 8 grams that can be, nutritionally beneficial to us. So 8 out of 50, do the math, what is it? 16% probably of daily value. Okay? So this is how it is. It's not the actual grams of protein, depends on how digested that protein, how complete is that protein. So we talked about this earlier, percent daily value for protein is found on the label with reduced calorie. No, it's not related. Everything else is correct. So there is a compliance for nutrition labeling. First of all, there are regulations for how do we collect representative samples and how many samples. That means the replication, how many samples, 6 samples, 12 samples, composite sample. We'll talk about that in chapter 5, when we talk about sampling. So for nutrition labeling, depending on the food product, there is a specific way of sampling. And then also there is a specific number of samples that we need to collect. Keep that in mind. We'll talk about it in chapter 5. And then the methods of analysis need to be official methods of analysis. So we, depending on the product or the sample, we do either AOAC or AOCS or any other method specified in the Code of Federal Regulations. And then there is a level of compliance. So if you get audited, you have to be careful of this. Now this, I'm not kidding, you really need to know, okay? So it's not hard to remember. If you added a nutrient, a vitamin, a mineral, protein, dietary fiber, it wasn't originally in your formula, on your ingredients, and you added it, and you're claiming its presence, the amount you claim on the label should be equal or greater than 100% of your claim. So if you're claiming 10 grams of protein, it has to have 10 grams of protein or 11 grams or 12 grams. If you get audited and you're claiming high protein and you added protein and then it comes down to less than 100% of what you claim, you're in trouble. You're not in compliance. If it is endogenous, naturally present, vitamins, mineral, protein, whatever it is, it's okay to be equal or greater than 80%. So let's say you are endogenously, you have 10 grams of protein per serving of flour. And then they measured and it turned out 9 grams. It's okay. It's fine. You're not making a claim. You're not adding protein. Last part here is for things that you don't really want to consume more of what they say on the label. Calories, you're watching your diet, you don't want to be taking more than what the label says. Total sugars, added sugars, total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium. Anything that can have negative implication on us. So these should be equal or less than 120%. Okay, so if you have 100 calories on the label and they measured it and turned out to be 140, you're in trouble. You have up to 120 calories that you can be off. All right, so this is important. You guys try to remember. Very perfect stop. This is where I stopped according to last time I taught the class. We'll do recap and continue on Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, guys. Yeah, let me stop the